So, my name is Eric Will. It is the Saturday, the 29th of February 2020. And I will be interviewing Dorothy Wyatt Peters for the Johnstown African American Heritage Society. We are in Johnstown, Pennsylvania at the Johnstown Area Heritage Association. It's a heritage discovery center in historic Cambria County. Now, to start off, just talk about some of your family. What can you tell me about your family's history in Johnstown, and just try and think back as far as you can go.
So my father, Wyatt comes from my father's side. The Wyatts lived in Kernville section of Johnstown for almost all of my life. And then my grandfather was Clarence Eugene Wyatt, and he was married to my grandmother, Dorothy Elizabeth Wyatt. And well, my grandmother passed away before I was born, so I did not get to meet her. And my grandfather passed away when I was 5. But I have very strong memories of him. He worked in the steel mills. He was just, they were part of the Eastern Stars and the Masons, members of the Oaks. So they were very involved in those community things. That was pretty strong in their history. It was kind of their way of socializing and being together and things like that. We did attend the First Cambria AME Zion Church. That's where I was baptized. I went to church every Sunday. My grandfather, there was no excuses. You had to go to church. He picked me up. He bought me dresses. We went to church. We lived, I mostly lived with them when I was younger than my parents. But we lived on Sherman Street in Kernville. And I remember the block was predominantly African American. They kind of, I guess you say, we kind of congregated together, usually in different areas of town. That happened a lot. But when we would walk or go different places, there was always fruit trees, apple trees, which you don't see anymore, or we had rhubarb in our backyard, things like that. Always had cookouts and family gatherings. I don't know what else to elaborate on.
Going back to your grandparents, do you have any idea of where they came from?
Yeah. So I know that my grandfather's side of the family originally came from Georgia. I'm not sure where exactly in Georgia. I know that's where they had originated, and then there was some history back to Jamaica even. Some of the generations further back, we found out. Now my grandmother, I don't know as much about her. They talk more about her Native American side than they do her African American side. But her Native American side was Sioux Indian, I believe, or Blackfoot, maybe both. And also on my grandfather's side, it was Cherokee Native American. So, but that's all I know, just from conversations with different people in my family. So.
Okay. Continuing on with family, is your family involved in any of the communities, say businesses, churches, government, anything like that you're aware of?
Outside of like I said, the Masons, the Eastern Stars, and the Elks,
right.
I don't know really outside of that. I know recently my brother was part of the, it's the African American males who were influential in the community. He earned the award. They select, I want to say, 20 men from the area who have made a difference in the African American community. And he was one of the individuals selected, I think, 2 years ago. And he actually has a day named after him for his contributions to athletics in the schools and things like that, because he still works in the schools now. So as far as history-wise, though, I'm not sure. That would be something I'd have to discuss with my dad. He would know way more than me.
So this next one will be about the culture of the area. So turning to the arts and culture, what have been some of the ways those in Johnstown's African American community have expressed themselves in the past? Say how your parents or grandparents' generations, what did the community do for entertainment you know of? Or how is that different from today?
I would say thinking back to my childhood, you know, a lot of it was going to church or just the family gatherings, having cookouts, going to each other's house. That was more the entertainment side of things. And I feel like there was a lot more support of one another and a lot more community, like when I was growing up and probably before my time. But I would say now it's very absent. There isn't, I can see certain groups or organizations trying to bring it back or work on it, but it's not happening with the younger generations. It's like the older generations are trying to keep it together, but the younger people aren't as receptive and willing to just be a part of that, you know? So it's, I don't know if I'm really answering the question, but
I think you are.
yeah. As far as like arts and culture, I'm always intrigued when I can find something, if that makes sense. I feel like there's not a lot to find, but when you do, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like that was from, you know, our culture and things like that. But it's not as celebrated or represented as I would like to see, I guess you could say.
And you would say that it's less now than it used to be?
Mm. Absolutely. There's not a lot of pride in the history. As far as young people, I mean, you, like I said, you see it in the older generations and they'll try to teach. And I feel like that happened too. You had a lot of your grandparents, your great-grandparents who were very involved. They were the ones who watched you after school, or, you know, you went to their house on the weekends, things like that. And so you got that history and that sense of pride where that's lacking now. You don't have those strong generational occurrences happening, or grandparents there teaching the younger youth, you know, this is what we did or this is what we experienced. It's very, at least in my experience, it's not there like it used to be. It's kind of heartbreaking.
That's interesting. All right. So this last question is regarding race relations, and we just want to thank you again for coming down here and talking to us. But we need to discuss the issue of race and racism. For starters, what did you hear from your grandparents, your parents, about the impact of racism within the Johnstown community, perhaps compared to your experiences, your parents, and just compare?
And you know, this is always a difficult topic. So I'm obviously multiracial. So I have experienced various sides of racism. And I would say in our area, it's still very apparent. But it's one of those things where no one wants to talk about it. You know, it's like a hush-hush, or we can be ignorant or rude to you, but we don't have to admit that that's wrong. And I feel like that's just been the steady stigma in Johnstown. So obviously, like with my parents, they experienced racism because they were an interracial couple. And my dad always talks about the couple that was killed here 40 years ago. The dad supposedly shot the couple. It was a Caucasian woman and an African American guy, and they were dating, and they got killed walking together because of their relationship. I believe that's the story. So from both sides of it, my parents experienced you know, from the white side, and then you shouldn't be with a black man, and then from the black side, you shouldn't be with a white woman, you know, those kind of things. And, you know, my dad and my grandfather, not so much my grandfather, he was kind of quiet about those kind of things, but my dad would talk about even in like job equality and being like police different than someone who's Caucasian and things like that, that you were treated differently just because you are African American. And honestly, I don't feel like that's changed much in our town. Like, but there are so many multiracial and biracial children, you would think at this point it would start to not be such a thing, but it definitely still is. Like, you still experience issues with police or issues in a store, or I don't know, like that's kind of what I view that's happening still. And then even just racism within the African American culture happens. So like the lighter you are, or you think that you're prettier or you're better or things like that, that happens still. And you wouldn't think that that would, but it does. So it's definitely still there, and it's a difficult topic, and it's a difficult thing to combat and try to break those generational mindsets too, you know, stopping people from, or changing their mindset, not stopping, that we're all similar. You know, your skin doesn't make you different, but I don't know if that answered it.
All right. We're going to wrap it up with a lighter topic. So what are your favorite things about this community? Just
My
what are your
favorite things.
dearest qualities about Johnstown?
Johnstown is. I appreciate the small town, but I try to be a city type of thing that happens in Johnstown, because it's definitely small, it's not a city. But then compared to, if you go, 30 minutes from here, you're like, oh, that's rural. So I do appreciate that quality. I do appreciate the people that are trying to rebuild, because it's definitely went downhill as far as structures and activities. Like, I remember when I was a kid, we went to the dances at the different schools or the different churches or the different athletic centers. We had more than one movie theater. I mean, we have two, but we had like $1 movie and things like that. Or we had basketball tournaments in the summer, and we had big baseball leagues, and though some of those things are still here, they're not anywhere near as attended and supported and things like that. So I love those things that I experienced as a kid, and I'm thankful for the people that are trying to continue it, but I wish it was more, happening more, if that makes sense.
Okay. So I think that's all we have. On behalf of AAHS and JAHA and UPJ, just want to thank you again for coming in and sharing with us.
No problem.
You did fantastic. So you can head back up to the registration and let them know that if there's another person up here ready to go,
Okay.
we'll send them down. And thank you.